He thought being a tourist gave him the right to do anything, grabbing the royal guard's weapon as if it were part of some amusement. The crowd held its breath, expecting silence or inaction. But the guard's response, calm yet commanding, set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. What happened next would leave everyone questioning their assumptions about respect and tradition. Let's start from the beginning. The morning light bathed Buckingham Palace in a soft golden glow, the scene straight out of a postcard. Tourists bustled about, snapping pictures, their chatter mixing with the distant hum of traffic. Amid this lively tableau stood a figure of unwavering composure, a member of the Queen's Guard, his tall black bearskin hat adding an air of stoic authority to his red ceremonial uniform. He was the embodiment of tradition and duty, a living reminder of a time when respect and discipline were virtues, not punchlines. Enter Emma and Jason, a pair of American tourists who had already decided this would be a day to live a little. Emma, dressed in an oversized hoodie emblazoned with a "London Rocks" slogan, was busy scrolling through her phone for viral challenges. Jason, sporting sunglasses despite the overcast skies, radiated that peculiar mix of bravado and entitlement some tourists mistake for charm. "Look at him," Emma said, nudging Jason. "He's like a statue. Do you think he's real?" Jason grinned, a mischievous gleam in his eye. "Real or not, he's here for our entertainment, right? I mean, what's the point of dressing up like that if he's not going to do something?" Emma chuckled. "Maybe we should, spice things up. Make him crack." Jason leaned closer, his tone dropping conspiratorially. "What if I grab his musket? Think he'd chase me?" At this moment, anyone with a shred of common sense would have thought, maybe don't provoke a trained soldier. But alas, Jason wasn't one for common sense. With the exaggerated casualness of someone trying to look inconspicuous, Jason approached the guard. A ripple of curiosity passed through the crowd. Some tourists began nudging each other, pointing, and murmuring in anticipation of whatever foolishness was about to unfold. The guard stood motionless, his gaze fixed ahead, as if he were carved from marble. But there was an almost imperceptible tension in the air, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Jason feigned adjusting his camera, his movements theatrical, and then, with a sudden lunge, he gripped the musket resting at the guard's side. The reaction was instant. The guard, without moving anything but his lips, delivered a single, bone-chilling command. "Release it, now." The tone wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of centuries, a voice steeped in the gravitas of duty and tradition. The crowd froze. For a moment, even Jason hesitated, the musket suddenly feeling far heavier in his grasp. And then, as if doubling down on his mistake, Jason forced a laugh. "Relax, buddy. It's just a joke." The mood of the onlookers shifted from amused curiosity to uneasy disapproval. A middle-aged woman clutching a Union Jack umbrella muttered, "This is disgraceful. Where's the respect?" Nearby, a father pulled his child closer, whispering something about how this was not how one behaved at Buckingham Palace. But not everyone disapproved. A group of teenagers snickered, phones raised, to capture every moment. "This is going viral," one of them said, grinning. Jason, still holding the musket, turned to the crowd as if expecting applause. Instead, there were murmurs of discontent. Emma, sensing the tide turning, tugged at Jason's sleeve. "Maybe we should stop now," she hissed. Before Jason could respond, the guard took a single step forward. The movement was deliberate, purposeful, and impossibly menacing. It was as if a lion had stirred, no longer content to endure the antics of a pesky hyena. The crowd gasped audibly, a collective intake of breath that echoed like a verdict. Jason, caught off guard, released the musket in an awkward motion, nearly stumbling over his own feet. It's just a joke," he stammered, holding up his hands. But no one was laughing anymore. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The guard resumed his stance, his expression unchanging, but the atmosphere had shifted. The crowd was no longer just an audience. They were participants in a moral reckoning. "You call that a joke?" someone shouted from the back. "Disgraceful," another voice chimed in. "He's not here to entertain you." Jason, visibly uncomfortable now, tried to wave it off. "Come on, folks, lighten up. It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. It wasn't just about one tourist and one guard. It was about what they both represented: the erosion of respect for tradition and the quiet dignity of those who upheld it. As the murmurs grew louder, Jason realized he was no longer in control of the narrative. This wasn't the harmless prank he'd envisioned. This was something else entirely, a spotlight shining on his arrogance, exposing it for all to see. And the guard? He stood tall, unshaken, a silent reminder that dignity doesn't need words. The tension hung thick in the air, a palpable weight that made even the wind seem hesitant to disturb the scene. The guard, having reclaimed his musket, stepped back into position with the precision of a well-oiled machine. His face remained unreadable, a mask of discipline forged over years of rigorous training. But there was something in his stance, a subtle shift, that spoke volumes. This wasn't over, not yet. And then, like a needle puncturing a balloon, a voice from the crowd shattered the silence. "Do you think this is funny?" A young woman with sharp eyes and a smartphone held aloft strode forward, her words aimed squarely at Jason. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the righteous edge of someone who had seen enough. "You're about to go viral, mate. TikTok's gonna love this." Jason turned, his expression a mix of confusion and annoyance. "It's just a joke," he protested, throwing his hands up as if to shield himself from the growing disapproval. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." The woman didn't flinch. "A joke? What if that musket had been loaded? What if your little prank had gone wrong?" Her words cut through the crowd like a blade, and murmurs of agreement rippled outward. As Jason fumbled for a response, a small figure emerged from the back of the crowd. A boy, no older than 8, pushed his way forward, his chest puffed out with the courage only children possess. Pinned to his jacket was a medal that glinted in the sunlight, an honor belonging to someone in his family, perhaps a veteran. The boy stopped in front of the guard, looking up with wide, sincere eyes. "Mr. Guard, are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The crowd fell silent again, this time out of respect. Even the teenagers, who had been gleefully recording moments earlier, lowered their phones, their faces now tinged with guilt. And then, for the first time, the guard broke protocol. Slowly, he bent at the waist, bringing himself closer to the boy's level. The motion was deliberate, almost reverent. "Thank you for your concern, young sir," the guard said, his voice warm and steady. The faintest hint of a smile touched his lips, just enough to convey the humanity behind the uniform. This single act of kindness sent a ripple through the crowd, a wave of emotion that left many with a lump in their throat. People exchanged glances, their earlier amusement now replaced with admiration and a pang of shame. Jason, meanwhile, stood awkwardly to the side, his bravado crumbling under the weight of the crowd's growing hostility. "I didn't mean anything by it," he muttered, but his words were swallowed by the murmurs of discontent. "You didn't mean anything?" the woman with the phone shot back. "You think because you're a tourist, you can treat people like props? He's not here for your amusement." Jason took a step back, his hands raised defensively. All right, I get it. Can we just move on?" But the crowd wasn't ready to let him off the hook. More voices joined the fray, each echoing the same sentiment. Respect the guard, respect the tradition, respect the country you're visiting. And then, as if to seal his fate, a voice rang out from the palace gates. "Excuse me, sir," a uniformed officer called, stepping into view. "We need to have a word." Jason's face turned pale. Emma, who had been lingering on the edges of the scene, took a hesitant step forward, clearly debating whether to intervene or quietly distance herself from the chaos. The officer gestured toward the palace entrance. "This way, please." As Jason was escorted away, the crowd began to disperse, their chatter filled with a mix of relief and lingering indignation. The guard, now back at his post, resumed his stoic stance, but to those who had witnessed the scene, he was no longer just a figure in a uniform. He was a symbol, a reminder that dignity and tradition are worth defending, even in the face of thoughtless provocation. The young woman with the phone stayed for a moment longer, watching as the guard straightened his shoulders and stared ahead. She tucked her phone into her pocket, a satisfied smile on her lips. "They'll think twice before messing with a guard again," she muttered, before blending into the crowd. "And the boy?" He lingered too, giving the guard a small salute before his mother gently guided him away. His innocent question and the guard's warm response had turned the moment into something far more profound than anyone had anticipated. As the square returned to its usual rhythm, one thought lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it all. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And today, the guard had earned it in spades. The next morning, the video of Jason's prank had gone viral, racking up millions of views. The hashtag #RespectTheGuard trended globally, and the internet erupted with debates. "This isn't funny," one comment read. "The guard showed more respect in silence than that guy did with his whole performance." News outlets picked up the story with headlines like, "Tourist disrespects iconic British tradition." Jason's face, caught mid-laugh, became a symbol of arrogance. Meanwhile, Emma posted an apology video trying to salvage her reputation. "It was just a joke," she insisted. But the internet wasn't having it. "A joke? Disrespect isn't comedy," one reply said. Her attempt only deepened the divide, cementing public disapproval. Back at Buckingham Palace, the guard resumed his post, greeted by a larger-than-usual crowd. People clapped, some left flowers, and whispers of admiration filled the air. A young woman approached the guard, the same one who had called Jason out the day before. "Thank you," she said softly. "You reminded us of what dignity looks like." The guard acknowledged her with a single respectful nod before adjusting his bearskin hat. From the crowd emerged the little boy, now holding his father's hand. He stepped forward and, with all the determination of a young admirer, mimicked the guard's stance. The crowd chuckled warmly, their earlier outrage replaced by admiration and hope. The guard, still stoic, allowed a fleeting smile to cross his face, just enough to acknowledge the boy's innocent tribute. By evening, the internet had turned the guard into a symbol of resilience and respect. Meanwhile, Jason and Emma faded into the background, their brief infamy a lesson on the cost of arrogance. For those who had witnessed it, the message was clear. Tradition isn't just about the past. It's a cornerstone of who we are, and sometimes standing still can say more than words ever could.